Listen. Can you hear the ancient breath of the mountains? The whispers carried on the wind through hollows deep and ridges forgotten. Welcome, seeker of shadows, to nightmare true horror. Tonight, we leave the paved roads and flickering neon behind, venturing deep into the heart of Appalachia, a land steeped in beauty. Yes, but also in secrets as old and gnarled as its eldest oaks. We will unearth 7 true tales, stories born from the isolation and the primal fear that these mountains so effortlessly conjure. What is it about these ancient slopes that breeds such unsettling encounters? Is it the weight of history, the impenetrable wilderness, or something older watching from the loam and shadow? Share your own Appalachian chills, your theories on what truly lurks beyond the tree line, in the comments below. Let the mountain's echoes resonate, and if you feel the call of the unknown, the irresistible pull of darkness hidden in plain sight, then subscribe, for the trails of nightmare true horror always lead to places you were warned not to tread. Steel your nerves. These are not fables spun by firelight. These are whispers of truth carried down from the high peaks. And remember, the deepest, most unsettling revelations often wait until the trail grows darkest, just before the story's end. Let us begin our ascent. Into fear they call it the Vanishing Route, a 30-mile stretch of the Appalachian Trail, cutting through the remote backcountry of West Virginia. The locals avoid it. Rangers recommend alternative paths. 6 hikers have disappeared there in the past decade. No bodies recovered, no definitive explanations. That's exactly why I chose to hike it. My podcast, Footsteps Unsolved, needed something big for the season finale. So there I was, 2 days into my solo journey, my recording equipment capturing every snapping twig and distant bird call. The October air had an edge that turned my breath to mist each morning, but the autumn colors made the risk worthwhile. Crimson and amber leaves carpeting a trail that wound through moss-covered rocks and ancient twisted trees. Near the summit of Blackwater Ridge on day 3, the weather changed. The sky darkened to slate, and mist crept between the trees like phantom fingers. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in an hour. I sought shelter beneath a granite overhang as the first fat raindrops began to fall. That's when I found the backpack. It was wedged deep under the rock, as if deliberately hidden rather than abandoned. Blue canvas, now faded to gray, with a distinctive patch. A mountain silhouette against a full moon. My throat tightened. I'd seen this exact backpack before, in a missing persons flyer at the ranger station. It belonged to Daniel Cortez, a 26-year-old hiker who had vanished 4 months earlier. My hands trembled as I pulled it free, unzipping the main compartment. Inside, a crushed water bottle, a rusted pocket knife, a plastic bag containing a half-eaten granola bar now green with mold, and a leather-bound journal sealed in a Ziploc bag. Water had seeped in despite the protection, leaving the pages swollen and wavy, but most of the writing remained legible. Rain hammered against leaves outside my shelter as I opened to the first entry. May 12th. Perfect weather for my first solo trek. Ranger seemed concerned when I mentioned taking the North Route. Said something about recent incidents. But the views from Blackwater Ridge will make great photos for my blog. Besides, what's an adventure without a little risk? I flipped forward several pages. May 14. Something strange today. Found a circle of stones that wasn't mentioned in any trail guide. Perfectly arranged, with something dark crusted in the center. Animal blood, maybe? Hunting is allowed here after all. Still, it felt deliberate. The next few entries detailed normal hiking observations, wildlife sightings, weather notes, complaints about blisters. Then the tone changed. May 16th. Woke to footprints around my tent. Too large for a raccoon, too small for a bear. Human, but who would circle my campsite at night without announcing themselves? Reported it when I ran into a day hiker heading south. He seemed unconcerned. Said hunters use these trails off-season despite regulations. May 17. The feeling of being watched is constant now. Twice today I turn to find nothing there, but the silence that falls when I stop walking, it's not natural, as if something is holding its breath, waiting for me to move again. A crack of thunder made me jump. Outside, the downpour had intensified, sheets of water creating a gray curtain across the mouth of my rocky shelter. I should stop reading, pack up Daniel's belongings to turn over to the Rangers. Instead, I turned the page. May 18. Found another stone circle, larger than the first, this time with clear boot prints around it, not mine. Left the area immediately. Also noticed missing supplies. Beef jerky, my backup lighter, and oddly my comb. Sleep will be difficult tonight. The next entry was written in shaky handwriting that veered off the lines. May 19. Something walked around my tent all night. Not an animal. Definitely not an animal. It whispered. Couldn't make out words, but the sound was human-like. A hoarse whisper just beyond the nylon. When I called out, it stopped. When I unzipped the tent, nothing was there. When I unzipped the tent, nothing was there. But my boots, which I'd left outside the vestibule, had been neatly placed facing my tent, like someone was sending a message. I listened to the rain, suddenly aware of how alone I was. My digital recorder continued capturing the ambient sounds, including the quickening of my breath. May 20. I'm being herded. Every path I try to take south gets blocked somehow. Fallen trees that weren't there yesterday. Rock slides too precise to be natural. I keep ending up pushed northeast, deeper into the remote areas. Map shows an abandoned fire tower 5 miles ahead. We'll try to reach it. Maybe gain elevation for cell signal. The entry for May 21st was just 3 words. Someone in trees. May 22nd was the final entry. The writing frantic and pressed hard into the page. Fire tower was a mistake. It's not on any official map because it's not a ranger tower. Found dozens of items hanging from the beams. Watches, cameras, shoes. All labeled with names and dates. Some go back to the 90s. There's a collection of hair, labeled samples with genetic profiles. Someone is studying the hikers before taking them. I found my comb there. They've been collecting my DNA. Getting out now. If found, tell rangers to search northeast of Blackwater Ridge. Coordinates roughly. The entry ended abruptly. Daniel had never finished writing the coordinates. Something rustled outside the overhang. My head snapped up, eyes straining through the rain. Just wind in the leaves, I told myself. But the hairs on my arms stood rigid. I needed to alert authorities immediately. I stuffed the journal into my own pack and prepared to brave the storm. That's when I noticed what I missed earlier. Scratched into the rock wall of my shelter, partially hidden by shadows. They collect before they hunt below it. A crude map. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my trail guide to compare. The scratches marked a location 2 miles northeast of my position. The rain had softened to a drizzle. I should wait for better conditions. I should head directly back to the ranger station. I should do anything but follow that map. Yet 20 minutes later, I was hiking northeast, Daniel's journal, and my recorder secure in my pack. The wet leaves muffled my footsteps as I moved through the gathering dusk. The rational part of my brain screamed warnings. But the journalist in me couldn't walk away, not when I might uncover what happened to 6 missing people. The forest grew denser, older, with trees I couldn't identify and undergrowth that seemed to grab at my ankles. No trail existed here. Just an occasionally broken branch suggesting human passage. As sunlight faded, shadows pooled between trees like spilled ink. I nearly missed it. A structure blending with the forest, its wooden beams gray and weathered, climbing upward through the canopy. Not a fire tower as Daniel had described, but something more like a hunter's blind crossed with a treehouse, expanded over decades into a grotesque multi-level dwelling. My breath caught as I crouched behind a fallen log. No lights shone from within. No movement betrayed occupancy. Just an unnatural silence. No birds, no insects, as if nature itself avoided this place. I raised my camera with shaking hands, zooming in on the structure. Through the lens, I could make out items hanging from the outer beams. Scraps of fabric, metal objects catching what little light remained, and things I couldn't identify from this distance. The wind shifted, carrying an odor that made my stomach clench. The unmistakable sweet sick scent of decay. A twig snapped somewhere to my left, then another behind me. They weren't even trying to be quiet anymore. I turned slowly, camera still raised, and captured one frame of the figure standing 20 yards away. Tall and gaunt, face obscured by a crude mask fashioned from what looked like tanned leather, watching me with perfect stillness. Then my world exploded into motion. I ran without conscious thought, crashing through undergrowth, lungs burning. Behind me, voices called to each other. Not two or three, but many, communicating in short whistles and calls that sounded almost bird-like. They were coordinating, moving to flank me. They knew these woods. I didn't. Darkness fell completely as I ran, my headlamp bouncing wildly, transforming the forest into a nightmarish carousel of twisted shapes. I veered south, trying to find the main trail, but the terrain grew steeper, forcing me upward instead of down. A whistle sounded directly ahead. I pivoted west, only to hear another answer from that direction. They were herding me, exactly as Daniel had described. I stumbled into a small clearing and froze. Stone circles, dozens of them, covered the ground, each with dark stains at their centers. Beyond them stood a crude altar-like structure draped with scraps of hiking gear. Fragments of jackets, boot laces, strips of backpacks. My recorder was still running in my pocket, capturing everything. If nothing else, there would be evidence. At the clearing's edge, figures emerged from the trees. 5, then 8, then more. Their faces hidden behind masks, I now recognized with horror as human skins stretched over carved wood. They carried no modern weapons, just stone-tipped spears and crude knives fashioned from bone. They didn't rush me. They simply closed their circle, patient as hunters who know their prey is trapped. One stepped forward, taller than the rest. Around his neck hung a collection of driver's licenses, laminated cards catching the beam of my light. He raised a hand, revealing a familiar object, a small silver digital recorder, identical to mine. "We've been waiting for you," he said, his voice incongruously educated, almost gentle. "Your podcast has excellent sound quality. We've been fans for quite some time." I backed toward the center of the clearing, mind racing for escape options that didn't exist. "What do you want?" My voice emerged as a whisper. The tall figure tilted his masked head. "What we've always wanted, to understand what makes some survive while others don't. To document the differences, to preserve the knowledge." He gestured, and the others began to move forward. "Your listeners will particularly enjoy this episode, I think." The recording device, recovered from the Blackwater Ridge area, contains 46 minutes of audio following this exchange. Authorities have classified its contents, but the families of the missing hikers report being told that no identifiable human remains were recovered from the site. The Footsteps Unsolved podcast remains on streaming platforms, its final episode eternally coming soon. Rangers have closed the North Route permanently. The whispers persist of stone circles appearing along other sections of the trail, and of recordings that sometimes interrupt hikers' devices at night, playing a familiar voice that always begins always the same way. Hello, listeners. This is not the episode I planned to make. I froze, heart pounding, scanning the trees. The shot had come from my left, too near for comfort. I wore an orange vest, bright as a traffic cone, but mistakes happened out here. Before I could move, a man stumbled from the underbrush, his camo jacket smeared with dirt. His face was pale, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. He clutched a rifle, its barrel trembling slightly. "Jesus, I'm sorry," he stammered, eyes wide. "Thought you were a deer." I forced a smile, my pulse still racing. "No harm done. Just spooked me." "His name was Dale," he said, "a mechanic from a nearby town." He kept glancing over his shoulder, toward a rusted pickup parked on a logging road. A heavy tarp covered the truck bed, sagging in the middle, secured with frayed rope. Something about it, maybe the way it bulged unevenly, made my skin prickle. "You all alone out here?" Dale asked, wiping his brow. His voice was tight, like he was holding something back. I nodded, regretting it instantly. He offered me water from a dented canteen, but his hands shook, and his eyes kept darting to the tarp. I declined, saying I should keep moving. As I turned, a low groan came from the truck, a muffled human sound. My stomach dropped. "You hear that?" I asked, turning back. Dale's face hardened, his grip tightening on the rifle. "Just the wind," he said too quickly. But the air was still, the leaves silent. I backed away, my boots scuffing the dirt, and he stepped closer, blocking the path. "You should stay off this trail," he said, his voice low. "Hunters ain't always careful." I mumbled something about heading out and hurried down the trail, my heart hammering. The groan echoed in my mind, unnatural and wrong. I glanced back. Dale was watching me, one hand on the tarp, the other on his rifle. The forest seemed to close in, branches clawing at my pack. I walked faster, the crunch of leaves deafening in the quiet. An hour later, I stopped to check my map, my hands unsteady. The trail forked ahead, one path leading to a ranger station 10 miles out. I needed to report this, but my phone had no signal, the screen a useless glow. As I stuffed the map away, I heard it, a twig snapping, deliberate and close. I spun, scanning the trees. Nothing, just shadows pooling under the canopy. But the air felt heavy, like eyes were on me. I pushed on, the trail growing steeper, the light fading as clouds rolled in. Another sound, boots scuffing dirt, maybe 100 yards back. I ducked behind a boulder, my breath shallow, and peered out. Dale's silhouette moved through the trees, rifle slung over his shoulder, his head swiveling. He wasn't hunting game, he was hunting me. I waited, muscles aching, until he passed, then bolted down the fork toward the ranger station. The trail twisted through a ravine, the walls of earth and rock muffling sound. My vest snagged on a branch, tearing with a loud rip. I cursed under my breath, then froze. A dog barked, sharp and frantic from the direction I'd come. Dale had backup, or something worse. The ravine opened to a clearing and I stumbled to a stop. The truck was there, parked crookedly, the tarp still in place. But now, a dark stain seeped through the fabric, glistening in the dim light. The groan came again, weaker, from under the tarp. My mouth went dry. My mouth went dry. I crept closer, knife in hand, and tugged the rope. The tarp fell away, revealing a man, bound, gagged, his face bruised and bloody. His eyes met mine, wide with terror, pleading. I fumbled with the ropes, my hands slick with sweat, when a shout rang out. "Get away from him!" Dale charged from the trees, rifle raised. I dove behind the truck as a shot rang out, the bullet pinging off metal. The bound man whimpered, thrashing weakly. I crawled under the truck, gravel biting my palms, and saw Dale's boots circling. "You shouldn't have stopped," he growled. "This ain't your business." My mind raced. The man in the truck bed, maybe a rival, a debtor, or just someone who'd crossed Dale, meant this wasn't random. Dale had a reason to keep him hidden, and now I was a witness. I gripped my knife, waiting for an opening. The dog's barks grew louder, joined by another set of boots. A woman's voice, cold and clipped. "Finish it, Dale. We can't leave him." I bolted from under the truck, sprinting for the trees. Shots cracked behind me, splintering bark. I zigzagged, branches whipping my face, until the gunfire stopped. My lungs burned, but I kept running. The ranger station my only hope. Night fell, the forest a maze of shadows. I hid in a hollow log, dirt smearing my face, and listened. Footsteps crunched nearby, then faded. A flashlight beam swept the woods, missing me by inches. At dawn, I staggered into the ranger station, gasping my story to a grizzled ranger named Tom. He called the sheriff, who sent a team to the clearing. They found the truck, but no tarp, no bound man, no Dale. Just tire tracks and a bloodstain soaked into the dirt. "Could have been poachers," the sheriff said, scribbling notes. "Or you misread it. Shock does funny things." I knew what I saw. Back home in Morgantown, I tried to forget, burying myself in lesson plans. But a month later, a letter arrived. No return address, postmarked from a town near the trail. Inside was a photo of me, taken that day in the woods, my orange vest bright against the trees. On the back, in jagged scrawl, "We don't miss twice." I burned the photo, but I still hear that groan in my dreams. See the tarps, dark stain. Dale and his partner wanted their secret buried, and I was just collateral. The Appalachians keep their secrets, and somewhere out there they're still hunting. Wow. The first time I saw the property, I felt uneasy. I'd inherited the land deep in the Appalachian mountains from my Uncle Robert, a man I barely knew. My friends joked it was my ticket to escaping the 9-to-5 grind, a secluded haven far away from life's noise. But standing there amidst twisted oaks and the dense silence, it felt more like exile than escape. It was late fall. Up trees stood skeletal against gray skies, their branches clawing desperately at clouds heavy with snow. At the center of it all was an old stone well, almost hidden by overgrown brambles. Curious, I moved toward it, the dry leaves crunching under my feet, sounding oddly brittle, like tiny bones breaking. Peering into the dark mouth of the well, I felt a chill ripple down my spine. The bottom was obscured in shadow. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing the beam downwards. I saw the bones first. They were pale, unmistakably human, scattered among dirt and old debris. My heart hammered in my chest. Beside them, barely visible in the grime, lay a tarnished sheriff's badge. I stared, breath fogging in the chill air, as dread twisted my gut. Sheriff Ethan Crawford. I could just make out the engraving. I'd heard the name before in whispered town gossip about a sheriff who disappeared years ago. Officially missing. Unofficially, people had theories. Dark, unsettling rumors. The police arrived an hour later. Officers combed the land methodically, faces set in quiet suspicion. They took the bones and badge, promising answers, but their eyes told a different story. One of old wounds reopened. Best leave, a deputy told me softly, eyes weary. This land ain't never been right. Despite the warning's stubbornness kept me there. I couldn't shake the feeling something was hidden, unresolved, beneath the surface of my inheritance. Each night brought nightmares. Bones crawling from the well, whispers from beneath the earth. Then came the knocking. But when it continued, rhythmic and insistent, I realized it wasn't branches. It was deliberate. Someone, or something, wanted me awake, listening. Days blended into sleepless nights. My nerves frayed. The town avoided me, their gazes flickering away whenever I approached. They knew something. And finally, desperation drove me to confront the oldest man in town, Henry Gable, a retired miner whose wrinkled face bore secrets like a map of troubles past. Sheriff Crawford wasn't no saint, Henry confessed quietly, eyes clouded with painful memories. He ran this place like his personal kingdom. Folks who crossed him just disappeared. Your Uncle Robert knew things. Things about Crawford. Maybe too much. That night, sleep evaded me completely. The knocking intensified, echoing like a heartbeat. Frustration boiled inside me until finally, I stormed out toward the well, flashlight slicing through the dense darkness. There was a fresh disturbance by the well. Soil moved aside, dirt scattered. A muddy shovel leaned against the stones. My breath caught, turning to mist. Someone had been here, digging. I spun around, flashlight sweeping the area. Shadows danced, mocking my panic. Suddenly, a cracking twig snapped loudly from the trees. "Who's there?" I shouted, voice shaking. From behind a thick trunk stepped a figure, familiar, yet twisted in rage. Henry Gable. His eyes burned feverishly, lit by the flickering beam. "You couldn't leave it alone," he rasped bitterly, stepping closer. "None of you ever could." "What did you do?" I demanded, heart thundering. "I set things right," he growled, fingers tightening around a rusted blade. "Crawford, Robert, they threatened everything. They needed to vanish? Robert, you killed my uncle?" I whispered, horrified. "He knew the sheriff's bones would surface one day," Henry replied. "Thought you might too." He lunged suddenly, blade flashing. I stumbled backward, falling against the stone of the well. Pain shot through my spine. Henry raised the knife again, eyes wild. A desperate kick connected hard with his knee. He crumpled, cursing loudly. Seizing the chance, I scrambled up, running blindly through the woods. Branches whipped my face. Roots grabbed my feet, but terror propelled me onward. I burst from the tree line onto the dirt road, gasping, head spinning. Headlights flooded the darkness, blue and red flashing lights behind them. The police. Henry had vanished when they searched the woods, leaving only footprints and the old knife. Days later, they found more remains near the well. Victims, hidden deep, silenced by Sheriff Crawford, then Henry Gable. The land was never peaceful, never mine, never safe. I left, selling the property for almost nothing. Yet some nights, even now, hundreds of miles away, I hear it again. That soft, insistent knocking, echoing like a heartbeat beneath the earth. The Appalachian Trail, for me, had always been a sanctuary. My name's Maya. I'm no hardcore survivalist, just a city girl who found solace in the ancient mountains. The whisper of wind through hemlocks, the burn in my thighs on a steep ascent. This trip, a 5-day solo loop in a lesser trafficked part of the Piasca National Forest, was supposed to be a reset. Miles from any road, just me and the mountain laurel. The first night, I pitched my tent in a small clearing, the air crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth. As twilight bled into a star-dusted black, I was drifting off when I heard it. Thunk. A rhythmic, muffled sound, like a shovel biting into soil. Then the soft cascade of dirt. My eyes snapped open. Animals? A bear digging for grubs. It seemed too regular, too deliberate. It wasn't close, maybe a quarter-mile off. Carried on the still night air. After a while, it stopped. I told myself it was nothing, the forest playing tricks. The second night, I camped deeper in, near a rushing creek, whose gurgle I hoped would be a comforting white noise. It wasn't. Around the same time, just as the last light faded, the digging started again. Thunk. Shh. Thunk. Shh. Closer this time. Definitely closer. My heart began a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There was no logical reason for anyone to be digging out here, in the dead of night, miles from civilization. I unzipped my tent flap a fraction, peering into the inky blackness. Nothing but shifting shadows and the ghostly silhouettes of trees. The sound was methodical, unhurried. It went on for an hour, then silence descended again, heavier than before. Sleep was a skittish creature that night. Day 3, I broke camp with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I couldn't shake the sound. I found myself scanning the forest floor, looking for, I didn't know what. Disturbed earth? Footprints? Mid-morning, not far from where I estimated the sound had come from, I found it. A patch of freshly turned soil, roughly rectangular, about 6 feet by 3. Not a grave, not deep enough, but definitely dug and refilled. No tools, no tracks I could decipher on the leaf litter. Just the raw, dark earth amidst the ancient forest. A shiver traced its way down my spine. What was being buried, or uncovered? That afternoon I pushed harder, wanting to put distance between myself and that spot. I told myself it was probably some old-timer with a hidden still, or ginseng poachers, but the explanations felt thin, unconvincing. As I set up camp that evening, on a ridge overlooking a misty valley, a profound sense of unease settled over me. I felt watched. The way the trees seemed to lean in, the way shadows clung to the undergrowth. The digging started earlier that night. Thunk. Shh. And it was close. So close I could almost feel the impact through the ground. My breath hitched. This wasn't just in my head. This was real. Then another sound joined it. A low, guttural humming. Almost a chant, wordless and mournful, weaving through the rhythmic scrape of the shovel. It was human. Terrifyingly human. I lay rigid in my sleeping bag. Bear spray, clutched in one hand. My small hatchet in the other. Every nerve screamed at me to run. But where? Into the pitch-black wilderness with that out there? The digging and humming continued for what felt like an eternity. I imagined pale figures with hollow eyes, their movements lit by a phantom moon. My mind, starved of rational explanation, conjured images from half-forgotten rural horror stories. The 4th day, I was a wreck, sleep-deprived, on edge. I had to know, or maybe I just had to convince myself I was wrong, that there was a mundane explanation, following barely discernible game trail. In the direction of the previous night's sounds, I moved slowly, cautiously. The forest was unnervingly silent, as if holding its breath. After an hour, the smell hit me. Wood smoke, and something else, something acrid and unsettling, like damp, unwashed bodies. And then I saw it, tucked into a hollow, almost invisible beneath a canopy of rhododendrons, was a crude lean-to, patched together with tarps and fallen branches. A thin tendril of smoke curled from a makeshift chimney. Outside it, A man and a woman, both rail thin, dressed in clothes that looked like they'd been scavenged. Their faces were gaunt, dirt-streaked, their eyes possessing a feral intensity. The man was sharpening a long, wicked-looking knife on a whetstone. The woman was stirring something in a blackened pot over a low fire. And beside her, leaning against a tree, were two shovels, their blades caked with fresh, dark earth. My blood turned to ice. These weren't just off-grid folks. There was a hardness to them, a dangerous edge that radiated outwards. My foot snapped a twig, a small sound, but in that loaded silence it was like a gunshot. Both their heads snapped up, eyes instantly fixing on my position. The man rose slowly, the knife still in his hand. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His eyes, cold and flat, said everything. Trespasser. There was no thought, only pure, unadulterated terror. I turned and ran. Branches whipped at my face. Roots threatened to trip me. I could hear them behind me, crashing through the undergrowth, their movements swift and practiced in this terrain. Not shouting, just the heavy sound of pursuit. I don't know how long I ran, fueled by adrenaline and the horrifying image of their faces. I stumbled onto the main trail eventually, my lungs burning, legs screaming. I didn't stop until I reached a ranger station. Hours later, babbling my story incoherently. They investigated, of course. A team went back in. They found the clearing where I'd seen the freshly turned earth. They found the hollow, but the lean-to was gone. Vanished. No trace of the couple, no tools, no fire pit. Just a faint depression in the leaves, as if it had all been a fever dream. The rangers were polite, but I saw the skepticism in their eyes. Probably just some folks who didn't want to be found, ma'am, one of them said gently. This forest is full of secrets, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The rhythmic thunk, shh, still echoes in my nightmares. What were they digging for, or burying? Were those rectangular patches graves for animals, or something else? Their motive remains a chilling mystery, a dark spot in the deep woods. Perhaps they were just protecting their isolation, their grim existence. Or maybe they were tending to something far more sinister. A hidden harvest the mountains kept secret. The Appalachian Trail is no longer my sanctuary. Now, when I see a shovel or hear the sound of earth being moved, a cold dread grips me. The wilderness, I learned, doesn't just hide beauty. It hides teeth, and sometimes you can hear them digging in the night. The first drop of blood glistened like a ruby on the rusted mailbox. I braked, my bike skidding on gravel. Route 23 wound through the Appalachians like a scar, all crumbling asphalt and hairpin turns. I'd taken up biking after the divorce, cheaper than therapy, and the hills didn't judge me for crying. The blood was fresh, smudged, like someone had gripped the mailbox while bleeding. No houses in sight, just pines clawing at the sky. I snapped a photo, texted my sister. Mountain folks are messy hunters, lol. Next morning, the blood was back. Day 2. A crimson handprint now. Fingers splayed. Flies buzzed. My phone had no signal. The woods hummed with cicadas, but no birds. A shotgun shell glinted in the ditch. Hello? My voice vanished into the trees. Something moved uphill. A figure in camo, face shadowed by a hat. He tilted his head, then melted into the forest. That night, my sister replied. Stay off Route 23. Missing hiker posters at the gas station. Day 3. The mailbox bled anew. This time, a trail. Drops led into the woods, fat and glistening. My therapist's voice nagged. Fixation is a trauma response, Claire. But the blood pulled. The cabin hid behind a thicket. Roof sagging. No cars. A child's sneaker on the porch. Inside, a kitchen table set for 4. Rotting meat swarmed with maggots. Upstairs, a mattress stained brown. Chains bolted to the floor. My vomit hit the boards as footsteps creaked below. The camo man stood in the doorway, shotgun loose in his grip. You ain't supposed to follow. I bolted. Branches lashed my face. His laugh chased me. Run, girl. Pa loves the chase. A horn blared. I tumbled into the road as a pickup swerved. The driver, a woman with a sheriff's badge, drew her pistol. Stay down. Gunfire erupted. The camo man howled. They found 7 graves behind the cabin. The sheriff spat tobacco. The millers, poachers mostly. Then, folks, why the mailbox? She eyed me. Bait. Fresh blood brings curious deer. Pause. And curious deer bring them. The miller's youngest son survived. Trial next month. Tonight. My doorbell cam caught a figure in camo. No face. Just a hat tilted like a greeting. The sheriff's number rings out. And my new mailbox, the one I bought after moving cities, reeks of iron. Final note. The crimson mailbox preys on the lure of morbid curiosity and the isolation of rural America, where the line between hunter and hunted blurs. The true horror isn't the blood. It's realizing that some trails are meant to be followed, and kindness is just another kind of bait. Check your mail. Check your mail. I hauled my toolbox inside, the door groaning on rusty hinges. The cabin was small. Living room, kitchen, 1 bedroom, all clad in faded paneling. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, slanting through cracked windows. I started with the basics, sweeping floors, checking pipes. By noon, I was in the crawl space, a damp, claustrophobic maze beneath the floorboards. My flashlight beam caught something odd. A rusted chest freezer. Tucked against the foundation, its padlock gleaming like it was new. I froze, the air thick with mildew. Why a freezer down here? Grandpa never mentioned it.
Grandpa never mentioned it.
The padlock was heavy, unyielding. I tapped it, and a faint hum vibrated through the metal. Not electrical, but something alive, like a heartbeat. My skin prickled. I crawled out, heart thudding, and grabbed a crowbar from my truck. Back in the crawl space, I pried at the lock, dirt raining on my neck. The lid creaked open, revealing a plastic bag, frosted over. Inside was a missing persons flyer, yellowed but intact. The face staring back was a woman, early 20s, named Clara Hayes. Last seen, 1998, near this valley. My mouth went dry. Clara's eyes seemed to follow me, her smile frozen. The flyer listed a diner in town as her last known location. I stuffed it in my pocket, slammed the freezer shut, and scrambled out. The cabin felt smaller now, the walls leaning in. I called my cousin Ellie, a nurse who'd grown up hearing Grandpa's stories. Ever hear about a freezer under the cabin? I asked, my voice shaky. Nope, she said, pausing. But Grandpa was weird about that place. Kept it locked when we visited. Said it was his sanctuary. She promised to ask her mom, my aunt, for more. For more. I hung up, the flyer burning a hole in my pocket. That night, I lay in the bedroom, the mattress sagging under me. A faint thump came from below the floor, rhythmic, like footsteps pacing the crawl space. I sat up, gripping my flashlight. The sound stopped, but the silence was worse. Heavy, watchful. Morning brought rain, gray sheets drumming the roof. I drove to the diner in town, a greasy spoon called Mabel's. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, recognized Clara's flyer. Disappeared after her shift, she said, pouring coffee. Cops thought she ran off. Broke her mama's heart. I asked about my grandfather. Her face tightened. He came in sometimes, quiet, always paid cash. Stopped coming around, 98, back at the cabin. I couldn't shake the waitress' words. I checked the crawl space again. The freezer's hum louder now, insistent. I noticed scratches on the lid, fresh and deep, like fingernails had clawed at it. My stomach churned. I searched the cabin, tearing through drawers and shelves. In a tin box under the sink, I found a key, small, shiny, a match for the padlock. My hands shook as I held it, the metal cold against my palm. That evening, Ellie called back. Manze's grandpa had a friend, Roy, who helped build the cabin. Shady guy, did time for theft. They had a falling out in the 90s. I thanked her, my mind racing. Roy, a name to chase. I locked every door, wedged a chair under the knob, and sat with the key, debating. The guide thump came again, faster from the crawl space. I grabbed a knife and my flashlight, heart pounding, and crawled beneath the floor. The freezer's hum filled the space, vibrating in my chest. I unlocked it, the lid groaning open. The bag was gone. In its place was a single photo. I'm sleeping in the cabin's bed, taken last night. My breath hitched. I backed away, dirt crumbling around me, and heard a new sound. A slow scrape, like a blade on wood, coming from the cabin above. I climbed out, knife in hand, and found the living room empty, but the chair was gone from the door, and muddy footprints trailed across the floor, leading to the bedroom. They weren't mine. I crept forward, the scrapey louder now, rhythmic. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open and stifled a scream. A man stood there, gaunt and gray-haired, carving something into the wall with a hunting knife. Roy. He turned, his eyes sunken, a smile curling his lips. "You found her," he said, nodding toward the crawl space. "Clara was mine," he said, nodding toward the crawl space. "Your grandpa took her from me. The carving was a name, Clara, etched over and over. The wood splintered and raw." I backed away, knife raised, but he lunged, his blade glinting. I swung, catching his arm, and ran for the door. He tackled me, his weight crushing, the knife grazing my shoulder. I kicked free, stumbling outside, rain soaking my clothes. I sprinted to my truck, Roy's footsteps pounding behind. Yee! The engine roared to life, and I peeled out, his silhouette shrinking in the rear view. At the sheriff's station, I spilled everything. The freezer, the flyer, Roy. They searched the cabin, found the photo, the carvings, and blood in the crawl space. But no Roy, no Clara. "Could be a drifter," the sheriff said. "We'll keep looking." I sold the cabin, moved to Pittsburgh, but the nightmare stayed. Last week, a package arrived. No address, just a Polaroid of the cabin's porch. My truck in the drive. On the back, in jagged scrawl, "I'm still here." Roy wanted Clara's secret kept, and I dug it up. Now, every creak in my apartment, every shadow, feels like him, waiting to finish what he started. I've always been a solo hiker. Something about the solitude centers me. Just my boots on the trail, my thoughts, and the whisper of wind through trees. After my divorce finalized last spring, these solo trips became my therapy. No judges, no lawyers, no bitter exchanges. Just me and the mountains. That's why I was on the Appalachian Trail in late October, pushing farther than most day hikers venture. The McAfee Knob section was popular, but I'd veered onto a less traveled spur that climbed to Sutton Ridge, planning to camp overnight before looping back. The afternoon light filtered through half-bare branches as I reached a small plateau. Perfect camping spot, relatively flat, with a stunning valley view and natural windbreak from a rocky outcropping. I shrugged off my pack, muscles aching pleasantly from the 7-mile climb. Most hikers use trekking poles to test the ground before pitching a tent, checking for rocks or roots. I carried a small folding shovel instead, useful for digging proper catholays and clearing tent spots. Some call it excessive, but 20 years of backcountry camping taught me to value good sleep above a few extra ounces in my pack. The plateau seemed ideal, but as I began clearing small rocks and fallen branches, something felt off. The soil was looser than it should be at this elevation, disturbed in a roughly rectangular area. Probably just frost heave, I thought, or maybe an animal had been digging. My shovel struck something solid about 6 inches down. The hollow sound made me pause. Not the sharp clack of stone, but a duller thud. Organic, wooden. I scraped away more dirt, revealing a weathered plank. My curiosity piqued. I carefully excavated around it. Not just a plank, a crude marker about 2 feet tall. Time and elements had erased any inscription it might have once carried. Old trail marker, maybe, I muttered aloud, my voice startling in the silence. But why bury a trail marker, and why was the soil around it so loose? A sense of unease crept over me as the sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the plateau. I should have stopped digging, should have moved to another spot, but curiosity is a powerful force. 3 feet to the left of the marker, my shovel struck something else. Fabric, rotted, but unmistakable. Synthetic, modern. My mouth went dry as I carefully brushed away more soil. The fabric was blue, a jacket or sleeping bag perhaps, and inside, I stumbled backward, dropping the shovel. Nestled in the deteriorating fabric were human remains. Not ancient, not archaeological. The synthetic fabric told me that much. Recent enough that some clothing remained, old enough that nature had done most of its work. The silence of the ridge seemed to press down like a physical weight. Wind rustled through remaining autumn leaves with a sound like whispering. The valley below, which had seemed so beautiful moments ago, now felt vast and threatening, too far from civilization, from help. I reached for my phone, already knowing it would show no service. My GPS device could send an emergency signal. But was this an emergency? The person was long dead. Nothing to be done. I should have left immediately. Hiked out in the fading light, but shock rooted me in place as questions flooded my mind. Who were they? How long had they been here? Was it an accident, or the alternative made my skin crawl? As daylight waned, practicality took over. Too dangerous to hike out now on unfamiliar trails. I'd have to camp and report this tomorrow, but not here. Not on top of a grave. I repacked hastily, working as the light diminished. A movement at the tree line caught my eye, probably a deer. The mountains held plenty of wildlife. I hiked another half-mile along the ridge before finding another suitable spot. Night had fallen completely by the time I pitched my tent. The routine tasks of setting up camp steadied my nerves. Until I realized my shovel was missing. I'd left it by the grave. Too late to go back now. I'd retrieve it in the morning. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by every snap of twigs and rustle of leaves outside my tent. Around 2 a.m., I jolted awake, certain I'd heard footsteps, the distinctive crunch of boots on fallen leaves. I lay perfectly still, listening. Nothing. Just dreams, I whispered, or animals. When I finally drifted off again, I dreamed of digging. Endless digging in loose soil that kept refilling itself. Dawn broke with heavy fog shrouding the ridge, limiting visibility to about 20 feet. I packed quickly, eager to report my discovery and leave this place. As I shouldered my backpack, I noticed something that turned my blood cold. Footprints in the soft earth around my tent, too large for deer, too defined for most wildlife. Human prints, circling my tent while I slept. I pulled out my camera and took photos of the prints before fear drove me toward the trail. I'd gone about 50 yards when I spotted my shovel, not where I'd left it by the grave, but propped against a tree along the trail. Directly in my path, my breath caught. Someone had moved it. Someone had been watching me. The fog seemed to press closer, moisture beating on my jacket. Sounds were muffled, distances distorted. I grabbed the shovel, a tool, yes, but also a potential weapon, and moved faster down the trail. A branch snapped behind me. I whirled around, shovel raised, but saw only swirling fog. Hello? Oh, I called, immediately regretting breaking the silence. Is someone there? No response, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. Racing down the mountain, constantly looking over my shoulder, seeing shapes in the fog that disappeared when I focused on them. The main trail appeared like a sanctuary when I finally reached it, though I was still miles from the trailhead. Around noon, I encountered other hikers, a middle-aged couple heading up to McAfee Knob. The normalcy of their cheerful greeting nearly broke me. Are you okay? The woman asked, noticing my state. I wasn't sure how to answer. Tell them about a shallow grave and mysterious footprints? They'd think I was crazy or playing a Halloween prank. Just spooked myself, I managed. Camped alone up on Sutton Ridge. The man's expression changed. Sutton? Most people avoid that spur trail. Why? I asked, though I feared I knew the answer. Local story. Hiker disappeared there about 5 years back. Search parties found nothing. Some say, he chuckled uncomfortably. Some say, someone lives up there. Not officially, you know. Some hermit or runaway. Rangers have investigated but never found any permanent camp. I reported my discovery at the ranger station. They took it seriously, collecting GPS coordinates and my photos. 2 days later, a forensics team recovered the remains of Kyle Maddox, the missing hiker from 5 years ago. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. The investigation is ongoing. They found 2 more graves since then, farther off trail. Hikers who were reported missing over the years. Their disappearances previously attributed to accidents or exposures. I check the news reports daily. They haven't caught anyone. The Rangers have closed Sutton Ridge for environmental reasons. Not wanting to cause panic among casual hikers, I suppose. Sometimes I wake at night, certain I hear the crunch of leaves outside my bedroom window. On those nights I remember the loose soil falling through my fingers, the weathered marker, the footprints circling my tent, and I wonder about the hermit no one can find, the ridge runner who watches hikers from the fog, deciding who returns to civilization and who becomes part of the mountain forever. I've sold my hiking gear. Some therapies are too dangerous, but sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear the whisper of leaves from the ridge, calling me back to the secrets still buried there. The trail fades behind you, or perhaps you feel its tendrils still clinging to your thoughts. 7 whispers from the heart of Appalachia, now etched into your awareness. Did you feel the isolation press in? The unseen eyes from the dense undergrowth. The chilling realization that some secrets are best left buried deep within the mountain's embrace. We promised you tales where the beauty of the wild masks a primal dread, and Appalachia, with its ancient soul, rarely disappoints. The true horror, perhaps, is understanding that some paths, once taken, can never truly be left behind. Which story's chill settled deepest in your bones tonight? Which encounter made you question the silence of your own backyard, or the shadows beyond your window? Unburden your thoughts, your lingering fears, in the comments below. The mountain listens, and your experiences add to its timeless lore. If this journey into the shadowed heart of Appalachia has awakened something within you, then subscribe to Nightmare True Horror. Let your light shine like a lantern against the encroaching darkness, guiding fellow adventurers in the uncanny to our fireside tales, until the mist rolls in again, and the old songs of the mountains call out with new, unsettling verses. Walk carefully, and always listen to the whispers on the wind.